Well, we'll start with what went down in Brazil, boss. UFC Fight Night 107 Saturday night in Fortaleza, Brazil. Over 14,000 fans, so obviously MMA still very popular in Brazil. They were there to see a couple of MMA legends, and two big names, of course, were on the bill. And in the main event, things did not go well for the man formerly known as the Phenom Vitor Belfort, as he took on Kelvin Gastelum. And Gastelum, who, let's face it, 3 strikes, he was out of the welterweight division, 170 pounds. And even before this fight against Belfort, he hinted he might want to return to 170. No way. He's now 4-0 at middleweight, even though I still think he's going to be too small for some of the upper echelon. But the way he looked against Belfort, so far, so good, my friend.
You know, he's doing a phenomenal job. He really stepped it up against Neil Magny. There's a fight that he lost by split decision, but after that, that was the only thing that he worked on was stamina. And then to outwork Tim Kennedy, you know, and stopping Tim Kennedy, yeah, that set everything up, of course, for this fight, Gastelum versus Belfort. I also thought, you know, early in the round, I see Belfort once he connects with those crazy fast punches, but he didn't. You know, he did it a little bit good in the beginning of the round. It started off well, but Gastelum, once he started taking over, dropped him with that big right hook, left straight, and then later again, exactly same combination, hook cross, boom, and he was out. It's like you said, it's the old guard versus the new guard.
Yeah, and just 3 weeks away from 40, Vitor Belfort, who, you know, still showed signs of the Phenom, like you say, typical Vitor fashion, comes out very strong. And throws a lot of punches and goes at it very quickly, but the chin is not there anymore. It's just not. And the fact that he has nothing left to prove, and what a legacy he is going to leave behind, a mixed one because, of course, of the TRT use. But, man, when he first burst on the scene in the mid-'90s, and I remember him stapling Vanderlei Silva, 44 seconds against the fence, and what he did, Randy Couture. And, I mean, when he was... What was he, 19 years old, my man?
He was very young. Yeah, Randy actually was the first guy to beat him at that time because he came in and he was everybody said he was going to go to the Olympics as a boxer. Then he was going to do the Superman movie. I mean, he jumped on the scene in a big way. But, you know, great guy. What a good guy. I had many conversations with him. I remember him a long time ago. He told me, hey, boss, I'm really training my kicks hard. Watch out. I'm going to start knocking people out with crazy spinning back kicks to the head. And he did right away. And that's where I mentioned it. You know, he knocked the first guy out. I go, wow, he just told me that he was going to do that because he worked hard on his kicks. So always been working, always been a great student. And, yeah, we loved him in Pride Fighting Championships as well.
Yeah, right. I remember when he came and faced Alistair Overeem in what was a battle of pride fighting championships versus the UFC. Overeem winning on that occasion. But for Belfort, there has been hardly any wins lately. And the fact that he has one more fight left on his contract, he says he would like to fight in Rio de Janeiro, preferably against a non-Brazilian opponent. And he would like to do it coming up later this year at UFC 212, where Gastelum, based on his performance against Belfort, he's already called out another Brazilian legend, Anderson Silva, who he would like to face in Brazil in June. You know, Silva, again, it's great for Gastelum's paycheck and his notoriety, and maybe he's smart knowing that right now the top of the middleweight division probably too big, too strong for a guy like Gastelum. Not saying that he wouldn't be able to compete. I'm just saying as he wades his way into the waters of 185, knocked off Vitor Belfort, a legend. Anderson Silva is not the same Anderson Silva as he once was. An opportunity for him to knock off another legend in Brazil, build his notoriety. Yeah, I could see that fight going down. As for Belfort, though, sure, all right, he wants one more fight. I guess he's earned that. Give him an opportunity to go out again on his shield, which he did on Saturday. Got to give him credit. He got up and then went back down. And that time was forced to stay down. But for him to come back, boss, I think it's one more fight and that's it. This League of Legends that he's been talking about, I do not support this in the least. We know Bellator's kind of done that with their bringing back of Ken Shamrock, Royce Gracie. Yes, big ratings, not great fights. Do you think, would you compete in something like this?
No, the reason is most of the time those legends, that means it's another word for being old.
Yeah.
You're just old and you had injuries, a lot of injuries. So the legends, to let them fight, for me, 4 neck surgeries later, nah, I'm not going to fight there. But
even with amended rules like bigger gloves, shorter rounds, longer rest breaks, what's the point?
No,
this is a violent
because,
sport.
as a fighter, you never want to downsize it. You never want to go like, oh, I put bigger gloves on. You're never going to feel, no, you want to be exactly like everybody else. I think it's a great idea where it comes from, because some older guys, they still want to compete, but, they can't against the young guys. But then again, eventually if you start winning in your division, let's say you beat other 40-year-olds, and you keep on winning, and then suddenly people start, hey, you know what? He could actually match up with the champion from now, and then boom, and then you go down again. So
I just think it's not safe. It's not safe. It's not safe.
Yep, that's it.
And that's enough said on that. So, so good main event for Kelvin Gastelum, building his resume at 185, and we talked about it in the opening there in the headlines. A mixed night of success. How about Mauricio Shogun Rua turning the clock back, going old school Pride Fighting Championships, where we will always. I mean, the biggest highlight for me, other than Kevin Randleman's knockout of Mirko Krokop and then dropping Fyodor Emelianenko on his head, was watching Mauricio Shogun Rua win that tournament at the age of 23. 23 years of age, he went through a murderer's row, brother. Remember Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira, Quentin Rampage Jackson, Ricardo Arona, Overeem. I mean, this thing was a tournament to remember, and now... yeah, he's past his prime, taking on a Strikeforce alum in Gian Villante, but Mauricio Shogun Rua gave the Brazilian fans something to cheer about on Saturday night.
This guy, it's really weird, because then you see him in a fight, I go, man, he's so wild, he's so open, what is he doing? And then in this fight, he comes out, body shots galore, left, rights to the body, upstairs. I mean, this guy is on fire. It's like, okay, sign another 10-fight contract because you're doing really well.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
No. Villante, he did really well. In the beginning, dropped a bunch of left hooks that hurt Rua, but like I said already, he started going to the body. Villante didn't use a lot of movement, and that was a problem. He got rocked a few times. I like the spleen shot that Rua threw in between the combinations, the uppercuts, everything, long uppercuts, long hooks. He stayed at the perfect distance, loved it, knocked him out. Man, I would love to see him again like this.
Well, he now has won 3 in a row. You talk about what we were mentioning about Belfort. As you said, if they pick up victories, what people are going to say, oh, he's maybe ready. Well, Rua, who is, let's face it, and I say this with all due respect, now past his prime as well, nearing 40 years old, and all of the wars. I mean, this guy is a legitimate first ballot Hall of Famer, man. Champion in the tournament in Pride, former UFC light heavyweight champion, the wars with Dan Henderson. So many incredible fights. Now, though, boss, he's won 3 straight. The longest winning streak in more than 10 years, going back to when he was in Pride Fighting Championships. So, again, building momentum, but at 205, which, let's face it, not the deepest weight division, earns himself another big fight. And, by the way, his 16 knockout victories in UFC Pride light heavyweight competition, the most in combined divisional history. This according to our friends at MMA Junkie and Fight Metric. Also, his 21 wins in UFC Pride light heavyweight competition, the most in combined divisional history. So Rua continues to build his Hall of Fame credentials. And for Villante, he has now suffered all 4 of his career stoppage losses by knockout. So at least he goes out on a shield, but you cringed when I said that.
Yeah, it's not a good thing.
It's not a good thing.
It's not a good thing, too many knockouts. And there's other people out there. You remember Clay Guida in the beginning.
Yeah.
They all say, and the Nogueira brothers, and everybody say, but they can take a punch, I say, yes, they can, but it's not a healthy thing to do. And now you hear them, they start to slow down,
And that's been for a few years with the Nogueira, especially Rodrigo. But like you say, boss.
But you depend on it.
Yes. The violence, though, of Pride and the length, the miles on that proverbial odometer. We're talking, as you know full well, firsthand, man. This is physical competition, with all due respect to the majority of all other sports. And football, we're seeing it more and more. Just over the weekend, another player retiring because of concussion. Because of concussion fears. Not even like it's just, and yeah, you're right. In the old school days, with the headbutts.
I mean, there was one. There's a guy in England, I believe he's from England. A soccer player saved 4 other soccer players that in the air headbutted each other when going both for one ball, and they knock each other completely out. Tongue swallows.
But that's rare. That's once in a while in soccer, in football.
That's true.
In MMA,
it's all
that's
the
the
time.
point. That's the point. I want to hit you. I want to punch you, strike you, kick you, knee you in the head.
Anything to stop you.
Yeah. Wow. So
yeah.
I don't believe in and it's always the case for me. I say this when it comes to controversial stoppages, or even when it comes to hanging up the gloves, boss. Better one punch too soon than one punch too late.
You're 100%. I'm now looking back on my career. I'm blessed with that. I get injuries. Because the injuries made me stop. Otherwise, if I wouldn't have had him, not my neck, everything would be perfect. I would still be competing.
Sure.
I know myself.
Yes,
I'm stupid.
That's good that you know yourself. You're not stupid, but you're prideful. You're hungry for competition.
Still want to go.
You're a man. You're muy macho.
Muy macho. Macho man.
Macho man.